hello, and welcome to a super special episode of Woke Mental Wellness presents Windy City Demons, or at least the wrap up to Windy City Demons. Please remember that these episodes can get pretty heavy. Please make sure to take care of yourself. We might be getting into all kinds of territory, everything from violence, mental illness, suicide, racial dynamics and racism, other forms of oppression, cultural difference. We don't shy away from anything, as you all know if you've been here before. So please make sure to take care of yourself. Feel free to pause, get some water, do whatever you need to do to be okay, including if you need to skip this one. But today, I have the distinct honor to be able to talk to some of the wonderful people from Witch and Craft Games who made the game that we have been playing that we just finished, 12 Inner Demons. So I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
All right. Hello. I'm Amelia. I am the lead designer and artist at Witch and Craft Games, leading everything from scenic Rome, Italy.
Mhm. And then hello, I'm Shoko. I'm one of the writers and general stuff doer over at Witch and Craft Games. I'm over from Berkeley.
Awesome. And yeah, we are holding it down here in Chicago. I'm so glad that you were both able to be here because I really love your game. I have some questions, and I really am excited to be able to hear more about what inspired the game and just, anything you want folks to know. So I guess the first question that I have is about how the concept for 12 inner demons materialized.
I think this is something that happened back in 2000. I want to say 17, 16. Um, Back in the day, I was coming out of a time of study with a famous comics artist, and I was working on trying to get a comics book approved for publication. And the idea for this comics book was brainstormed between me and Shoko,
Hmm.
and it was kind of like the proto 12 essentially. It was about a girl and her inner demons and stuff like that. Obviously, what I wasn't prepared for was the fact that uh, a few months later I would come out as transgender and go through all the process of it, which put a stop to a lot of other things I was doing, including trying to get a comics book published. But what happened in the end is that, like, once I was able to get back into making things, I had an idea for turning that story into a game, and it kind of matured through the fact that I went through a lot in that period, and a lot of it was my own inner demons, essentially. And so I decided, after going through this, might as well try and tell that story.
Okay, yeah.
And then Shogo was just there. I want to work on it, and I'm just all right.
Yeah,
I get people,
I mean, if I
like, I guess. Back in that time, I was actually working on another game with two people in Rome. That game never got finished, but Shoko was in the playtest group for that game.
Mhm.
And after I was
Oh,
like, listen, this game is not going anywhere. We're not doing it. And I was like, but I kind of still want to make games. And I was like, well, why don't we make one then?
Yep. And so
Yeah,
it was you and then two of the playtest group members, and we just got
yeah,
started.
yeah, yeah.
that is
Yeah, the other one
awesome.
is Victoria. She isn't here today, but she's our flavor rider essentially.
Mhm.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then later on, we picked up Rowan, who wasn't in that project, and they are another rider from the UK.
Okay,
And on
yeah.
12, we also had Ian, who's also from the US, and was essentially kind of like running troubleshooting on all the rules and stuff, kind of like
Mhm.
giving everything a final read, if you want.
Okay, awesome. So, um, with the game, obviously the premise being you've got 12 days to basically figure out your life and
Yeah.
in order to prevent an archdemon coming and swallowing you whole. And so as someone who is a mental health professional, as well as someone who has a lot of their own mental health issues, I could feel the like depth and accuracy of
Mm.
how the game reads and how it plays. And so the one thing that I'm always interested when it comes to artists and other creative folks and content creators and everything is when something feels that real, how the process of making the game or the piece of art impacted you in process.
I think the important thing to keep in mind when you're doing that, and I think what I was trying to keep in mind while working on 12 was that 12 is not a game about the bad things in the end. 12 is a game that was specifically made about hope. And through that time, when I was going through a lot. I got to a point in which I just couldn't keep laying down. I was doing nothing all day. I was constantly just living day by day. Nothing was changing. I got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, and and having to relieve that while I was writing, the one thing that helped me go through it was like remembering the fact that I got through it, and that what I wanted people to learn, I guess, or see reading the book was the fact that you can go through it and get to the other side. And once you get there, everything is going to maybe not be fine, but be a little better, you know. And that was kind of like why I made the game the way it is. Why the art is not overly green. Why the pages are not all black.
Yeah.
Why like we could have gone with that, right?
I
We could have gone a full Bloodborne. I could have just gone full Lovecraft. I could have had everything just be
Yeah.
tentacles and blood and stuff. And I didn't want that. I wanted people to look at the demons and be like, I mean, yeah, this is scary, but this kind of looks like a person. 'Cause that's
Mhm.
that's that's where it's at.
Kind of
Yeah.
putting that vibrancy to it
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
big
yeah.
part of it.
Yeah, I love the art in the book, and as you're
Oh, thank
saying
you.
that, and you're talking about hope, I feel like I ruined your game.
No, no, it's fine. See, it's fine because
Because
uh,
our party
that
TPK'd.
yeah, but that's also fine because when you lose in the game, obviously the game kind of puts it in a very final way, like Dinger's archdemon got to you, and you
Yeah.
are transformed in a demon, right? You are eaten by the archdemon, and whatever is left to you is transformed in a demon. But maybe that's not that bad. Like,
Yeah.
you keep existing. It's just a different you.
Hmm.
Like,
Mm,
maybe once your problems catch up with you, you turn into something else. Maybe
true.
that doesn't always have to be bad. Like in the end, demons are just like other beings, or like other people. They're different from us, but that doesn't mean they are bad.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That was actually something that kind of came up a lot in the original playtest we did, which we had streamed. We had started it over
Extensively.
text and then turned it into a stream, and then it was a whole thing. But in that original playtest, it actually came up a lot that one of the big things the players kept going into is trying to figure out where their demons came from and maybe who they were
Mm.
before or if they were anyone before. And it
Ooh,
put a very
yeah.
interesting spin on their particular interactions.
Yeah, that's really cool. I had watched a little bit of the playtest in preparation for running the
Was
game.
a it was a goofier game.
Yeah, it
Definitely
was
a more light-hearted games. They were just going off, throwing boats at problems.
yeah. Meanwhile, I'm like, "Cool, you were abandoned as a child. Let's go."
Yeah, but that's fine though, because honestly, I like that kind of reach. You can go low, you can go high, you can go funny, you can go green. It just depends on what story you want to tell, and I'm happy that you can do both.
Yeah, and to be fair with, I know the players aren't here today, but they in creating their characters and really thinking it out gave it so much thought, which was so helpful
Yeah.
in what I was able to do to twist it around and make it their nightmare. Um,
And then there
but
is also like, obviously it depends on the GM a lot, right? Because
yeah,
if the GM wants to, they don't have to end the game early, if you wanna keep going, if you wanna give them another chance, you always can. Like
yeah,
nothing is final until the 12th day. If you just want things to be a little lighter, you can. You just
Mhm.
just do what you wanna. I'm not your
um,
mom. I'm not
yeah.
telling you what to do.
Absolutely. And we did decide on we did end up deciding on a darker, heavier game
Yeah, yeah,
and playing kind of with a time limit outside of just the 12 days as far as
yeah.
like our availability. But I am really curious to hear more about like so whenever I was GMing the game, I think one of the hardest things for me was the scaling for
Hmm.
like when they should spend XP, and I know this starts getting a little crunchy, but like
No, no, it's fine.
Mhm.
Love crunch.
trying not to kill them prematurely, right? But also trying to make things still have that kind of dire feeling to it that the game
Yeah.
brings.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear more about you all's thoughts and ideas when running the game for
All right.
scaling and when to know when to ratchet it up and when to like leave it lie a little bit more.
All right. So I think a big part of that is once again the concept of like nothing is final until the last day. So sometimes if you throw an A maker at your players and you didn't mean to, but that happened. Sometimes you just misjudge how hard you're going on them, and you send all of them flying.
Yeah.
They just wake up the next day. That can happen. The fact is, like, we
Mm.
balance this game into lasting 9 days. Essentially, there is a 3 days buffer to this
Okay.
game to make sure that you can essentially take three-party wipes and still like reasonably make it.
Mhm.
Now, the fact is, obviously, there is GM preference, and that is like something that you can't account for. It's just like something that happens.
Oh, yeah.
But when we were making this, a lot of it was essentially trying to suggest to GMs that you don't always have to attack your players in order to stop them.
Mhm.
Like, obviously, this does hinge on how much the player is involved and invested,
Mhm.
but sometimes you don't have to just slap them with a lot of demons, have a fight. And sometimes you can just have a seal, which is go talk to the person. Maybe one of your seals has to do with a relationship gone wrong. You just go talk to that person, sort it out. You can throw a bone to your players if you want and just be like, just go sort it out. It's fine, it's doable. Technically, if all players
Yeah.
just did that, you could finish the game in 3 days, maybe less. But you could just be like, I am going to face all my problems add on starting right now.
Mhm. But that
I think it says something that people don't do that. People don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do it in real life either, because it's art. It's not easy. And obviously, the metaphysical response in game is that demons are going to try and stop you if you try to do that too.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's actually easier than doing seals, and I like that people tend to not even think about it. They're just like, "All
Mhm.
right, seals time, let's go." Like, you could just go talk to them.
It's also, a particular thing I learned from running the game a bunch of times that as both the playtests and then at conventions and things like that when we got a chance to go on to do some online conventions.
Yeah, UKG.
Uh, a big thing about how to scale demons I found is depending on the type of game you're running, but very specifically that in the default type of game, in the investigation style game where you're trying to find your seals and deal with them, your demons are kind of lazy. Like, they don't need to be actively doing things. There's a 12-day timer. They can wait. They don't have to hunt down the party. They're in the position where they can fully just watch you try and fail and then wait for you to do things. And that's a good way I found of kind of how to scale up things. That at the start, it's not that the demons are weaker, but that they just kind of don't have as much investment in the fight. They don't need to win.
Mm.
They just need you to not win. And as you keep winning, that's when they start pulling out the bigger and bigger things. That's when they start actively trying to stop you because suddenly your success is no longer not happening. It's now starting to become a foregone conclusion.
There's also, I think, like maybe the most important thing is don't be afraid to throw fear tests at people.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
I think some GMs might look at fear tests and feel like, oh, these are the important things. You know, these are like this must be reserved for a moment when things are high stakes. No, just toss them. Just toss fear tests at people. Like things that make you uncomfortable actually happen. Like I mean, in my experience, things that make me uncomfortable happen a lot during the day.
Oh
I wish
yeah.
they didn't, but they kind of have this tendency of doing it. Fear tests don't always have to be like the big thing. Sometimes it's just like I remember one of the playtests we were doing. Like one of our person had an amount of agoraphobia, didn't like crowds, and they were in the line to get in a museum, and suddenly all the crowd was kind of like pressing on them, and they got scared. They started feeling uneasy. They got a fear test.
Yeah.
You gotta remember that every time you throw a fear test at your players, regardless of whether they pass it or not, someone is getting XP,
Yeah.
which means that someone in the party is getting stronger.
Yeah, and I think that is one thing. I figured out the fear tests before things got too far. I think so my personality, I am very type A and I like doing lots of things all at once. And so it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, no, go talk to this person who you feel has wronged you, but also while that's happening, this is also
Yeah.
happening. And I
Mhm.
think that I mean,
No, keeping the tension up is great.
it made for great tension, and since folks had a limited amount of time they were available, like, it worked out, but
Mhm.
yeah, no, we,
Oh yeah.
that and timing, I think I let time slots last too long.
That could be.
That's something that I also noticed being a problem in our playtests.
Yeah, that is also like I don't think there is a right amount of time a time slot is supposed to last. I think that just depends on how much you want it to last in the end. It's like some things when you make games, unless you wanna. I am a fan of very
Mm.
crunchy games. I don't write very crunchy games, but I love them.
Valid.
I love when my game like knows everything about what's happening. My favorite game is Rogue Trader because I love to build a starship piece by piece.
Yeah.
You know, I need all those like Galar field generators and warp engines. I need to put everything together. I love crunch. I love to put that stack all my numbers and be like, well, that's a 102 to it. I literally can't fail. But sometimes some things in games, when you're not trying to make this kind of games, they have to be loose. They have to just be like, how do you feel? It's just something that has to be. And one of the things that we try to respect, and I'm happy that you mentioned it actually, is time constraints.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people lately, and this is why one shots game are so popular, I think. A lot of people are just finding it hard to go in a long campaign. And one of the cool things about 12 is since you have 6 seals and 12 days, you can just axe them in half, in three. You can divide. You can decide, oh, we're just going 4 days, 2 seals. Let's go.
Yeah.
Just make sure that there is the time for everyone to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Zuko.
Additionally, to the nature of time slots being kind of changeable and being able to stretch them and make them work as long as you want, I actually found works really well for making some scenes and days feel a lot more not important, but functional and nightmarish in the way that the game is trying to get across.
Mm.
Having a really, really long time slot can have your players coming out of it feeling tired, like
Yeah.
actually feeling that wow, that was a day, that was a big thing. Whereas like having the next couple time slots being really short gives it like you can play with that. You can play with the length of a time slot to make things feel less or more dramatic. And
Yeah.
it ends up being fun. It's not necessarily easy. I flubbed it up a lot, but
There's also the fact that like this is our first game, and as much as like we are very used to TTRPGs, and I have a decent respect of our skill, I think if we didn't make any mistake with the rules, it would have been quite incredible. At this point, I will be like ascended to a different plane of understanding, which I haven't. So there is more than one chance that we actually haven't done a perfect game.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
And no one does that.
of
So
course.
no one makes perfect games.
Yeah, I think too, though the malleability of the game works really well for the content of the game, though, right? Because
Mhm.
I can feel how I feel, right, about how I ran it and look back and be like, oh, I could have done that, like hindsight and all that. But at the same time, I think
Yeah.
that's a really great simulation of how trauma and mental health and illness can impact our sense of time and how time works, right?
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
those days that just drag on where everything feels
Yeah.
like a challenge, everything feels terrible. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
those days that are so quick that you're like, oh my God, I did nothing. What? Or, oh my God, I did
Mhm.
everything.
Been there, done that.
And so I know I kind of said this before, but I really enjoy how much the game actually feels like mental health issues feel in so many ways.
Okay, can I give you like the secret here? The secret sauce?
Yeah,
Like the secret ingredient?
go for it.
When I finished high school, I went to comic school and university at the same time. That wasn't a good move. Got me big problems, and I dropped out of university, but
Okay.
that's another story. But in comic school, they taught me one thing, and they say that to me every day for 3 years. And that thing was, if you're going to be learning how to make a story, you're going to be learning what kind of stories you can tell, and those are the stories that you've been through.
Mm.
And the secret to making a game that talks about something is that you need to make it about something that you know intimately. And you know, this kind of problems was something that I was just coming kind of out of. I don't know if I'm out of it yet,
Yeah.
uh, but it's very hard to write about something you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's a mistake that a lot of people do. They just like, oh, I like this, I'm going to write about it. They don't know about it, and it just comes out as nothing. It doesn't have substance. When you actually have been through something, you can write about it and you can make a metaphor of it that reads like something completely different, but it's actually your story. Now, in this one case, it's a little less hidden, but you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
no, for sure. Especially like I kind of consider 12 to be in the horror realm, right?
Yeah.
And I was on a panel and we were talking about horror and it's just like stop trying to do stuff you don't know anything about. Like everybody's like,
Mhm.
"Ooh, I want to do a horror about like this culture or this ability issue." And it's like, "Listen, you're not understanding what's actually horrifying. You don't get it. Please stop."
Yeah.
And I
If you want to do that, you need to get someone who knows how that is working with
yeah.
you. And it has to come from like a place of wanting to tell that story because you think it's important. It can't just be like something that you get up one day and, oh, I think this thing is cool, I'm gonna talk about it. No, no, don't do
Yeah.
that. Don't do that.
Yeah. And, Vita's talked about this with Aya and the different ways that Aya's anger and feelings and things came up
Hmm.
were very informed by the way that Vita's anger and things have come up in
Yeah.
the past before they did their work
Mhm.
and things, and even sometimes now, right? And so I just really appreciate a game that goes after mental health in a horror genre, but does it in a way that doesn't feel exploitative or point missing.
No, thank you.
So,
We try our best. I feel, and I don't want to. I don't. Okay. I'm not passing judgment on anyone. I'm not calling out anyone here. What I'm just saying is that you tend to do your best when it comes to this stuff. When you talk about something that's important to you and you know because you think it's important and not because you think it's relevant and it's going to make you money.
yep.
Mhm.
People might go into the horror genre because they think, oh, it's popular now. Like, if you don't got any horror to talk about, if you haven't gone through any horror that you can relate to, what horror are you going to tell me about exactly? Like even the silliest slasher movies in the 70s, the good ones are the ones that are actually gripping with something real.
Yeah.
You can tell. You can just tell. You look at them and you can
Oh,
Mhm.
tell.
absolutely. And like I think at its best, that's what is so healing about horror, right? Of like being able
Yeah.
to go through it and come out the other end, even if coming out the other end is a TPK. But
Mhm.
just being able to do that in an environment that is purposeful, that is boundaried and containered, is something that we don't get to do very often when it comes
Yeah.
to the real life horrors, when it comes to these things. It's also
Yeah.
why, we did our best to keep as much like racism and police and harm to
Hmm.
children and things like that out of our game, because
Yeah.
we have to deal with that so much right now.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think when it comes to those subjects, that needs to be a different game. Like one that actually is made by people who know how that feels and can like specifically pinpoint it. I don't want to talk too much about other things we're doing, but we're doing right now a game that does deal with the police and like police actions a lot in an antagonistic way. Because I have been in my fair share of street riots, of protests, and I remember how that is. I remember what happens. But it's a completely different game. It's a game that is specifically geared to handle that kind of content. Gotta be careful. You gotta be
Yeah.
careful with games.
Mhm.
It turns out games can be way more real, like than people think. Like I'm not gonna say that games brought me to transition, but they kind of did. Like I went through playing bog standard D&D, making girl characters, and then I made a vampire character in a VTM game that was assigned male at birth but presenting female, and then from that, oops, maybe I want to be a girl. Maybe I was a girl the whole time. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, games actually are very real. Games are a way, and I think people kind of forget this when they talk about games, like disparaging way. But games are and make believe in general are the way we exercise and give form to all the things that we can't face and we can't point at during the day life because we're too scared to talk about it because we can't give them a real form yet.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I mean, maybe that's just how I do, but I use games and this kind of stuff to give them form. Sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it. It just happens on its own. It's kind of like the Greek concept of tragedies, right? You need to get through that catharsis. You need to get through that point in which the audience is identifying with the troubles of the protagonist and then purifying
Yeah.
themselves through the climax of it.
Yeah. And I mean, if I can be petty for just a hot minute, because I read that awful
Yeah, sure.
Bloomberg article yesterday, and this
Oof.
is
Oh, about the
why
games? Oh,
games
that one.
are
Oh,
culture, assholes. Fucking hell. Like,
that article
Like
was that
I,
hurt.
I haven't read it actually. What
oh.
happened in it?
It's.
Okay, I'm not actually. I don't actually. Maybe it's not a good question.
I mean,
I will link it to you
yeah,
later. It's
it's
something else.
oh
Okay.
man, I can send it to you on Twitter if you want. It's a
All right. I'll,
trip,
I'll
and it
take a look.
it does tie into the conversation, because the whole thesis of this drivel article is basically games aren't culture, they're destroying culture. And
Oh, Eckhoff.
and so it's
Ryan, disappear from my
yeah,
site
and
right
there's
now.
of
Come
course
on.
they're talking about games in this way of like games are ahistorical and they're this new phenomenon, and they're mostly like centering video games with no acknowledgement that there are multiple categories of games, and they're like games aren't real culture because they're based on doing
Okay.
the thing
Okay.
versus watching the thing. And I'm like, what kind of colonial white bullshit definition capitalist
It's
gatekeeping shit is
honestly like
this?
it's definitely capitalist, but
Hmm.
like and like once again, only talk about the things I know. Like, but I have been a classical studies I mean, in classical studies high school, it's like a
Okay.
thing in Italy, right? Back in ye all the day of Rome, they use it to do these days in which people will role play as mythic
Yeah.
figures and have festivals about it. And I guess that isn't culture. I guess that Roman comedy theater isn't culture. I guess the gladiatorial games weren't culture, even though it was literally just wrestling of the
Mhm.
time. I guess that nothing is
Right?
culture at this point.
And I'm just
Just
like, they've found dice and gaming culture stuff in Africa, in Egypt, in
oh
Asia
yeah,
and India and all these other
oh yeah.
places. And like, just none of that. It's just like
Hmm.
the self contained nature of games means they're not only eroding mass
I
culture, but also making government regulation more difficult. And I'm just like,
I wish to yeah. I'd wish to show them the like second century D20 that they found in
right?
Rome. Like, what do you think this is? What do you think this is? Not even Roman numbers. I don't even know where this
Yep.
comes from. Okay?
The thing that gets me about that particular line of like the isolated nature
Yeah.
of games got me particularly because of the idea. It's like, do you not know multiplayer games exist? Are
Oh
you
yeah, aside
unaware
from
that
that.
this is a means of that people use to communicate with other people? Like not even in like a massively multiplayer way. Like this could be online chess. People play online chess.
Right? Self-contained as if MMOs and battle royales aren't literally everything coming out
Oh
right
yeah.
now. Like,
Oh
Yep.
yeah, right now everything is multiplayer. Everything is connected right now. But
Hmm.
but no, that article is terrible. And I'm also just like, talk about missing the point about the importance of play and missing
Oh,
the
absolutely.
like importance of all the things that games represent and do for us and help societally and stuff like at their best, right? Games represent the perfect opportunity for modeling theories, having intergenerational interaction and synthesis in playing games. Like, where else do you get that? Games and art, games, dancing, whether it's basketball or whether it's Halo or whether it's D&D.
Yeah. Not only that, but games have been a means of teaching people for centuries. They're a thing that like I cannot think of a single primary school like class I was in where there wasn't some kind of like, oh, we'll role play as a thing or we'll talk through something as kind of like making it fun, making it a way that
Yep.
kids can understand it. It's a thing that we grow up with. It's a thing that's an intrinsic part of
Yeah.
culture as a whole to understand through
Yeah.
other mediums. I mean, in some cases, it was literal. I had a history teacher who literally got a big board game of the history of the world and had us play, and then like would stop and talk about everything that was happening as we go through
Yep.
it. But
Those were the best days.
those were the best.
And I think that's part of where we're failing as a society is we are trying to remove all the leisure, all the fun, all the joy and rest out of everything to
Hmm.
squeeze every ounce of productivity out of people and out of children, and it's disgusting. And then articles like this just quantify that, and it's like, this is why everyone's depressed because you shame people for what little joy they have.
Hmm. It feels like panic moralizing. Very similar, if not identical, to the whole D&D devil worshipping scare
Yep.
back in the day. And that was entirely like there was no thought in that. That whole mess came from people who did not actually look into what they were condemning. They just condemned it based on the loosest information they could get out of it.
Mhm.
Like that kind of thing always is just wild to me. You can look at this book and if you give 10 minutes into it, you can see what the actual premise of this is and that your assertion that this is a game making kids into devil worshippers is in fact probably the opposite, in
Right?
fact.
Like, the
Yeah.
devil's the
Like
bad
this
guy.
is a game where you kids can get together and punch out Satan.
Right? I mean, but it's the same nonsensical panic with Lil Nas X, right?
Oh
It's
yeah.
like, "Oh my god, how dare." It's like, the guy killed the devil at the end. Did you what do you want?
Yep.
So,
I think humans need to try and be someone else. Like,
yeah.
not even sometimes. I think they need it often. Because not only gets you to try a different point of view,
Mhm.
but it's also the way we explore all the things that we can't be
Mm.
in our lives because of pressure from society, because preconceptions that we have. Now, obviously, it's easy for me to talk like that. I tried being a woman and I liked it, so I so I decided that I was a woman. And obviously that's very reductive. But what I'm trying to say is, it's really hard for me to understand this. Like, games are a non-culture that doesn't teach you anything. Game actually teach you who you are. What do you want?
Yeah.
Hmm. There are means for you to explore ideas that you can't do normally, and if you like those ideas and if they work for you, then you can start like expressing them outside of it. It's an important facet of everything.
That cultivation of creativity and imagination is so important, and the fact that it's being, at least in the US, so squashed constantly is maybe the reason
Hmm.
we have so many problems.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the fact that people don't have much of an imagination of what could be anymore, like, collectively, maybe that's a lot more of a problem than a kid who likes to play Stardew Valley.
Oh, the horror.
Ooh. Well, you tell me they dream of having an independent activity, just like on a farm anywhere, where no one
Right?
like piles expectations on them all the
How
time.
dare they dream of collectivism?
How horrifying.
They dare of dreaming of living in an environment where they can do a fulfilling job and then go and interact with other people and exist in a community.
Nope.
Gasp.
Yeah.
And when capitalism isn't a thing? Ah,
Yep.
disgusting.
And that's the thing, is there's so much that can be worked out, like, so I use various facets of tabletop gaming and various gaming in my work as a therapist. And so for the folks I work with who like gaming, we'll use character sheets and stuff as part of doing parts therapy, and like breaking down their parts and like building out their internal adventuring party. Who's working with who's doing non-consensual PvP, like what are people's strengths and weaknesses and stuff, and we can use any game system they're familiar with. And I think that the importance of play and joy is just so underappreciated now, because we're so far into this like end stage capitalism that we're really just shooting ourselves in
Hmm.
the foot, in the hand, just over and over and over again as we disconnect from the things that make us human, like being able to imagine. Who didn't have an imaginary friend?
Yeah, seriously.
It's also like you mentioned non-consensual PvP, and they got my brain jogging because I have learned a lot of how you relate to other people through
Yeah.
games.
Hmm.
Games force you to not only relate to the player but to the characters. There's a lot of relating going on, okay?
Yeah.
And that's actually that's been very helpful for me just as a person. That's another of the reasons why I wanted to make 12. There is a small silly part of me that's just like, maybe someone plays this game and makes them slightly better. At
Yeah.
the end of it, they got slightly better
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well,
at
yeah.
anything,
Well,
anything they
well,
want.
I know that I really enjoyed playing the game, and I definitely hope to continue playing it and you know, hopefully maybe not kill my party every time. Maybe I'll try one of those light games you suggested. I'd never heard of it before.
I mean, you could just get Show to you, like, to give you an hand. I don't know. You can get Show to GM something. It's gonna it's gonna show you how to be way too soft. I don't know.
I mean, you can't blame that
Whoa.
entirely on me. You saw the players I was working with. That was a game with Morgan. You can't. You
Truth,
can't.
truth.
Yeah.
Morgan is
All three
unstoppable.
of the players in the playtest. So the playtest had 5 players, 2
Yeah.
humans and 3 demons. And all 3 of those demon players each individually set out to break the game in a different way.
That's useful.
One of
Yeah.
them set out to break the game mechanically. Like just straight up how much power can I put on a character? And they succeeded pretty well. King was terrifying. The next player
Yeah.
tried to break the game, like, idealistically. How can they use their combination of powers and abilities in the most creative and broken ways possible? And I'd say they
Yeah.
succeeded. Wretched was kind of ridiculous.
Yep.
And then there's Morgan.
Flying car, jumping out of a flying car, throwing shuriken while the Kill Bill sirens
Yep.
blazing. Yeah,
And then
yeah,
there's
sure.
Morgan, who set out to
Sure.
break the game narratively and succeeded
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very, very well.
I to this day I still dread.
There was never a moment. There was an entire moment of like, there's a seal on a boat. They need to find a way to get out to the
Mhm.
boat. They can't just swim out there. There's the demon is in the water around it. How do they get out to the boat? Well, they could go get another boat and swim out there, or they could try to find their way out there, or they could hijack a cargo ship by possessing it, and then basically just run an action movie through the San Francisco Bay before crashing the boat into the mooring of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Turns out that if you pile enough boats
Yes.
in a line, they become a bridge.
Yeah.
That's what I learned that day.
Amazing.
It's the old Cersei method, you know.
Yeah.
Gotta get to a river, I'm gonna pile boats in.
Yeah.
Except one of the boats is demonically cursed.
I have to say, as a player, I am absolutely like that. My friend
Yeah.
Morgan and I, when we play games, we're just a GM's nightmare because we're like, okay, let's break the story.
That's fun. As a GM, I do appreciate when that happens because
Yeah.
it means that my players are like invest into what they're doing, you know, to the
Oh,
point
yeah.
that they want
Yeah,
more of it.
I love that kind of thing as a GM. It's super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't GM'd in a while actually. I'm getting the itch. I've been going back to it yesterday, so I'm fresh out of it.
Nice. Yeah, in our playthrough, the thing it broke the story in a way that doomed them, but they did break my
Yeah.
story because I talk about this in the wrap-up episode of like, no, I didn't expect you all to stay in the hospital. Why did you do that? That was supposed to be like the big bad, you needed more XP there. I pulled it back a little bit, but then we were also running low on time. So,
Yeah.
well, drown in a pool
sometimes-
of your own tears, I suppose.
Yeah. When you go one of those situations in 12, I think to remember is that especially the big demons don't have to be like a straight up fight.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A lot of them you can build them more like a puzzle. You know, you can just have like a chain demon on the other side of the road throwing cars at you, and you just gotta bob and weave and get to an alley that's too big to get through. You know, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just like you mix and match, make it interesting. It's always our like jamming and players. It's a constant one-upping because whenever the player does something you don't expect, you gotta counteract with something they don't expect. They weren't prepared for, and they're going to do the same to you. And it's this constant
A back and
like
forth.
back and forth that I think makes it for the cool story. When you stop acting it and you stop telling the story and you start actually playing it, you know.
Yeah. And like what I ended up doing is I was like, okay, I don't just want to squish them in a fight with this demon. So the demon's going to disappear. Our player demon character punched a hole in the floor, did it very messily, and so they all fell through the floor and then they ended up in a maze. And so they had to find their way through the maze and then ended up there was like this pool and the seal was definitely down at the bottom. The pool, however, because apparently I'm still a 17-year-old edgelord, was a pool of tears. And so the point was that they had to work through all of the years of tears and grief in order to get to that seal. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's real.
Yep.
Very real. Yeah. You gotta go through it, right? You gotta go through it sometimes. It's just what happens.
It's what happens when you have a therapist GM the trauma game.
I don't know if my therapist will go there, you know.
Yeah.
It takes talent, I think.
Yeah, trauma therapist running the trauma game. It's
yeah, who would have guessed? Yeah, you're right. We gotta do the things we are best at, though.
Yeah, right?
Just, I don't think there is a game about BDSM though, so I'm
Oh,
stuck doing other things.
yeah, there is. There absolutely I mean, like,
Oh, there are. There
especially,
are.
like, in all honesty, Vampire the Masquerade very
Oh
quickly can
Yeah.
yeah,
become about
yeah.
BDSM, let's be
Is
honest.
that why I'm GMing VTM now? Is that what's happening? Okay. Wow, I feel seen.
Yeah. Yup. Just, Toreador in a brothel. But, alright, so I know we're towards the end. Do you have
Okay. If
any
you have the if you have the really hard question, if you have the really serious question, you gotta do it now.
um
If you want to talk about our hard feelings, it's time to do it now.
Okay, hard feelings. Besides your own game,
Mhm.
what was the most transformative TTRPG for you?
Hmm. Okay, so this is kind of harsh. We're going to go a dark place right now.
Okay.
I think it's VTM, but the reason for it is a combination of things. So VTM is Vampires the Masquerade. It can be a dark game, and it is a game where a lot of things come up often, and parents children relationships, definitely sire, like it's mimicked, like sire child relationship,
Oh yeah.
death, and what lies beyond, the transformation of self. As I said, like the moment in which I started actually accepting my condition as a transgender woman was through playing a character in a vampires game, and I also used that to work through a lot of other of my traumas, like my relationship with parent figures, my attempt at suicide, you know, a lot of hard stuff. And I think it's also the game that taught me that sometimes the end of something is just like a transformation into another thing, and you just keep going. And that was so important for me, just as a person, not just, yes, in a game sense, but just as a person, that changed like the way I look at many things. So yeah, and if it all went into 12, all of it, all of those problems I was working on with that game, all of those traumas, they all went into the making of 12, in going from like me being sad about things as a small NB vampire to me being hopeful about things, writing about demons.
Nice.
Yeah, that's where we are.
Okay.
I think
So,
I might have a kind of weird answer here
all right, let's go.
because I think the most transformative game I've ever like interacted with is not a game that was ever published.
No,
Okay.
no.
It was a tiny RPG that I tried to make back when I was like
Oh, okay.
14. And so way back in the day, I had this idea. I wanted to make a game. I wanted to make a game that was like based on one of my favorite video games at the time. You know that feeling that game designers get all the time. It's like, "Oh, I've played this thing. I want to play it. I want to play more. I want to interact with it more in a way that it doesn't allow me to."
Yeah.
And so I started making this little game, and I just kept I just kept digging into it. And the idea was like it was a you wash up on a shore and it's a shipwreck survival thing and you go into adventures trying to rebuild yourself from the shipwreck.
Mm.
And the more I interacted with, the more I worked with it, the more I kept doodling it in the notebooks of my high school, like in little high school notebooks and whatever, the more it changed, the different it became. Like it started as a little, oh, I want to play more of this video game that I like, and turned into its own thing in an interesting way. I think that's really why it's so important to me. Like the idea that like you don't have to finish where you start. You can start with something and it can become something completely new.
Yeah.
It can become something much more than it was originally. or it could be something that's like it wasn't even the original versions of that game were even bad or in any way. It just turned into something else. And you know what? I liked that.
I don't think that's a weird answer. I think that's a beautiful answer.
I'm sorry for those no show. I thought you were going to talk about something else. I was like, oh no, we're going there.
I have a feeling I know what you were going to say.
Uh, yeah.
This is the reference. Oh no.
But yeah, no, and I will not
Uh,
divulge the actual video game unless you want me to, because it is deeply embarrassing because it's not. It's like a weird niche rhythm game that no one's played.
Well, now I
I
have
know
to
this.
know.
It's Patapon 2. I don't think
Okay.
anyone knows Patapon 2 but me.
I disagree. I know more than one person who knows about Patapon.
Yes, but did they put 600 hours into it? Because I can guarantee you they didn't.
No, I think they have their priorities set
They
better.
probably do.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not claiming that
Okay,
me putting
okay. I want to point
Yeah.
something. I want to put it like this: me and Show, we are in a relationship, and so we get to snipe these things at each other, right? Don't do it to people that you're not confident with.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, mine's actually Monster Hearts.
Oh.
Was mine because it was one of the earlier games I played, but like growing up, my mom tried to make me stop watching Buffy and Charmed and was like, "Oh, that's the devil," and da 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 da. And so like the idea of getting to play a monster and to play with the parts of myself that other people found monstrous in a way that was like negotiated and fun was great. And so I got to play this amazingly horrible queen bee character that was incredibly broken, um, that was such a mess. Like,
I
even
love
then,
that.
like, this character literally was running, like, a drug and prostitution ring in the high school and, like, forcing people to join her hive by doing so. And it was super great because I wasn't the popular kid, I wasn't any of this, but I got to have that power in the game in a way that was like, "Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
This is incredibly fun and incredibly toxic, and I don't wanna be this person."
Yeah, right?
So, yeah, that was yeah, and I've played many games and I've ran, games of Monster Hearts, so it's definitely one of my, definitely up there for me.
Right, so me as an Adder's fangirl,
Yeah.
big Queen Bee energy, appreciate.
Yeah.
Definitely vibing. Definitely
Absolutely.
vibing there.
Oh. So do either of you have any final questions for me?
Oh.
What did you want to see that you didn't get from the game? What is it you wanted there to be and it wasn't there and it disappointed you? Just
Okay.
strike me down.
So I think the biggest thing for me that I wanted was I think I wanted more guidance on running the game. Like I wanted more
Okay.
verbose space for like GMing the game because I think I felt really lost a lot of the time as far as trying to do it. And I like to go really hard. And at the same time, like the game makes it so easy to go too hard, which definitely plays into my own weaknesses as a GM in one of my areas of growth. And so I think that for me, I wanted more guidance as an MC and I wanted more guidance on creation of items for the characters.
All right,
I
that's
think
good.
the items hold so much opportunity, but there just wasn't enough there to for both me and the players to fully get them. And so like I did a little bit of a home brewing with the bullets that Imani
Yeah.
used was a combination of items and then I tried to scale the cost for like this is how many bullets so and this is what they can do and they're pretty powerful
Yeah.
so we're going to do it like this. But it would have been really cool to kind of like you were saying Amelia earlier of like not necessarily having to be super crunchy about it, but that ability to build, I would have
Having more of a
I
framework.
would have liked to see
A little
more
more.
of the framework. I think the
I think.
examples that were given
Uh,
were great, but I would have liked more framework of how to build it yourself.
no, I appreciate like being able to take criticism. By the way, a really important
Yeah.
skill when you make games. Um, Definitely also not taking notes for an eventual supplement.
Yeah.
I think some of the constraints when it comes to the item was the Kickstarter. Like I don't want to complain too much because there were like so many awesome people like supporting us. But the big problem of capitalism, right? We
Yeah.
can only work as much as we get paid for it, and our Kickstarter was about like
Yeah.
$9,000, which isn't a lot. We did what we could, and we could have done more, I suppose, with that. It's something to take,
I mean,
something to
I'm not
keep in
even gonna
mind
say
for the
that
next
because
game.
people are bad when it comes to Kickstarters and stuff. Like, especially kind of being a little bit
Oh
on the
yeah.
other end of it right now as I'm working on Into the Motherlands. Like, people can be kind of
Mm.
ridiculous. And it's just like, listen, do you have money for swords? Like, do you have money for us to sell swords? What are you
Oh yeah.
talking about? Like, do you have money for 6 different versions? Like, give it a break. Who's paying for all those artists? Like, people need to be paid and they need to be paid a proper amount. Like,
Suspiciously wealthy
Mhm.
capitalists.
right? So, yeah. And that's why I also want to acknowledge like the feedback is also acknowledging that like let's be really honest about how I feel about 12. It is a beautiful game that I really enjoyed playing and that I definitely intend to play again. It is completely playable. I love that it's not a D20 system. And I love the authenticity in it. Like, I am kind of a stan for this game right now. And so,
Oh,
like, also understanding that, like, of course, like you said before, there's always things that could be different or more, or like this could have tweaked here and stuff. And also
yeah.
the things that I want to see or that I would want to see are also like, yeah, no, like there's got to be more money and I don't have an extra 20 grand to give y'all to do it. So
Mhm.
we're going to play the game
No,
we got.
like, no. I think like I didn't want to make it an excuse, but I was trying to say like we want always to make more. We want always to go for the extra mile.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you just like you fall short of it, and it doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just like I wanted there to be more, I just couldn't make it because there is so much to do and so little people.
There were a lot of things on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, as a big problem is also the art.
Yeah.
uh it's suffering doing a whole book of arts.
Yeah. But
I'll
it
tell
is
you.
gorgeous.
I am happy that you think it like that. However, it was so stressful for me, and I'm
Probably.
doing it again, and I don't know what's
Oh no.
possessing me, and I don't know what possesses me. It's just like I have a problem. I am kind of like I wouldn't say I'm like obsessed with control, but I kind of am. And so I have like I need to have everything under my control, and it's really hard to work with other artists for me
Mm,
because it never feels like we are on the same wavelength. And I know that's all my problem, but damn, it's so hard. It's once again one of those things that you gotta grow in, right? Another thing that
yeah.
was like personal growth for me when it comes to 12 was delegating. I'm really
Yeah.
bad at letting other people take responsibility because I want everything to be done under my eye, and I couldn't do a whole book myself, so I had to
Yeah.
just take my boyfriend here and a few other people and just tell them I trust you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was
Fear
hard.
test.
Fear test
Yeah,
indeed.
it was hard. I did. I mean, I might have even lost it, but I did. I went through it anyway. Sometimes you gotta go through fear tests, even if you know you might lose them.
Yo.
Mhm. I guess in terms of another question, just as kind of a lighter thing to end on, what were your favorite demons out of the book? What did you like the best?
Oh God. Okay, wait. Now I have to pull out the book.
Pull out the props.
Yup. Cause I was one of those annoying ass backers, so I have the special
Oh
edition.
yeah,
Yeah.
Um
cool one, the big
Yup.
one.
Um because yeah, no, oh my God. I liked
Alternate
so many of
color
them.
and everything.
Yeah. So I did use King of Mists because I really liked the lore and the progression of that one. And then I liked the Stormbringer a lot
Hmm.
and just being able to theme it with whatever weather you
Mhm.
like. Yeah, that was big for me because I like lightning and
Weather
thunderstorms and
shenanigans.
tornadoes and stuff. Yeah, their shenanigans
Hmm.
were great for
Uh,
that.
I guess I can give you like a few Easter eggs on that.
Okay,
So
go
the
for it.
Stormbringer and the chain one were actually the first two big demons I drew,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the first two big demons that got made, and that's the reason why they are red oni, blue oni. Like in the
Oh.
earliest ever moment, they were just representing like strong demons and smart demon essentially. And in
Ah,
order to like make
nice.
it clear on a developing stand, I just made one like the classic red oni and the other is the classic blue oni. Because one is brutish and the other is clever. When it
Nice.
comes to the King of Mists, I think Show came up with the King of Mists. I came up with Cernobog, and I think you came up with Broken Moon as well.
Yeah, I definitely.
And the other three are actually the Beckers. They were made by the
Okay.
Beckers.
Mhm.
Nice.
One of them, McNamara, was made by a girl in Central Africa, I think,
Mhm.
Oh,
that
cool.
a friend of hers backed and gave her the privilege, essentially, of doing the demon. And essentially, she painted us. That was probably the hardest for me to visualize because,
Mhm.
something I was completely unfamiliar with. And then she gave us all this, like, cool imagery of this, like, flying demon dressed in like finery and with like long golden locks but looking like a zombie, and it was
Yeah.
very very fun for me to like come up with a design for it. I felt like I went and like did obviously some documentation on like Central African clothes, trying to get like something, and I didn't want to go through too hard though. I didn't want to do something that would feel almost artificial, and in the end I went with this like very very simple blue robe that I think works decently with it.
Yeah.
And the others two are so the Sphinx was actually the first person to donate $500. They surprised us so much that we made the name a demon if you donate so much tier
Yeah.
Yeah,
just for
we're
them.
like, you gave us so much money, we have to do something.
And then other two people did it. Yeah.
Nice.
And the third one, the angel one, the
Mhm.
money lender demon, that one was the boat person. The one was the boat player from the playtest.
Yeah, and
Okay.
That
Nice.
one was
that.
Morgan, and that character is actually supposed to be like the archdemon version of her playdesk character,
Mhm.
Oh, you're right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
who is also in the book. She's in one of the images. There is like a small spidery demon
Yes.
with golden hair, and it's her. That's the like
Yeah.
the original form, and then that is like the archdemon form.
Mhm.
Yeah, King of Mists. So I love it because it's based on like Goethe and Schubert, and I used to play a lot of Schubert when I was a piano player. Back when I
Mm.
had 10 fingers. Now one of them
Yeah.
doesn't work, so I can't play the piano. But
Mm.
so I'm really like tied to that
Mhm.
demon. I feel very strongly for it.
Yeah.
If if I remember rightly,
Nice.
like that early, a lot of the early demon concepts, I think it was like a day where you basically gave me and Victoria just to go ahead of, hey, brainstorm some demons, go. And then we were just sitting there going like, okay, what can we do with this? And we're like looking at mythological figures and mythological stories and monsters and things like that. And like the easy ones were Broken
Yeah.
Moon because I'm a very big Aztec mythology nerd. Based, I mean, my name is kind of
Nice.
part of the reason behind that.
What's your name
Oh
again?
yeah, no, my name is a shortened form of Shakotl because it's actually my name, but it's Aztec and it's a whole thing. But it's like
Yeah.
that was pretty easy. There was one that didn't actually make it in the full game based on the Raktabija. That was a fun one.
Yeah,
Mm.
And
we
then
might have that in the future. Who knows?
mhm,
The book that teaches you how to be a GM and also has many more items.
mhm. Yeah.
I will
I
buy
think
it.
if I remember rightly, the King of Mists specifically came out of this idea of like, I think I got recommended a version of the Earl King song on YouTube, like just
Mm,
while we were
Mm.
working, and I was listening to it, go like,
I
okay.
think because
oh,
Yeah.
one of those days we were talking about this stuff, and I was spoon feeding you like Musoski,
oh
like by the
yeah,
shovel, and like all other like Mendelssohn and this kind of stuff. Might have also linked to that version of the Erlkönig.
but yeah, that's where it definitely came from, and
Yeah,
I'm a fan of the King of Myths. I mean, I ran him for the playtests. I got a lot of fun, a lot of time to play with the King of Myths, and I honestly don't think
Yeah.
I did him a good
I
enough job, like
I
in the
think it was
playtest.
fine, honestly.
The more I've like played through it, the more I realized this is a demon who you could totally have just like messing with the players from day one, just talking to them from day one, and it would be great. And I like that. I really like that.
Yeah, I definitely, as I realized we were finishing up, I definitely started doing a little bit more and
Hmm.
more of that, of just like whispering in the ear of like, hey, I
Hmm.
could help you.
I think that is one of the like more interesting parts of the Archdemon, like the growing threat that you can actually see.
Hmm.
That is one of the
Yeah.
things we are the proudest of when it comes to this game. Like the whole ambient, the whole environment has to feel kind
Mhm.
of hostile, kind of like the enemy, kind of
Hmm.
threatening in a way. That just builds the mood, I guess.
There's one of those in particular that
Yeah.
you came up with that I cannot get over how cool it is, which is
Which
the
one?
one for Chernobog. I think it's day 7, where you feel the phantom impact of someone hitting your head with a hammer. Like you turn around the corner and you feel that, and then it's gone, and nothing was there, nothing happened, but you just felt that for a second. That every time I love that so much.
That is pretty spooky.
Hmm.
3 spooky 5 me.
Yeah. Yeah, the progression and the ambiance that like is just built into the game is amazing. So yes.
Environment is a player, not. I think sometimes GMs tend to and games tend to forget like how important that
Hmm.
is. Like the environment
Yeah.
is a player at the table. It does things.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
All right.
we will have to wrap up there, but it has been amazing talking to you both.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
we had a really great time.
Yeah,
Honestly,
thanks for having us.
Yeah.
felt good and like safe to talk about like even some of the Ardust things here without no problem.
Hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, thank you for your game and for coming and talking to us. And so feel free to where are you at, where people can find you
All
if you have a
right.
new project,
So
promote yourselves.
So we have a Twitter at Witch and Craft, and we also now have a site that you can find. It's just witchandcraftgames.com.
Hmm.
Neat, and you can find all our things there: our Kickstarters, our games, Twitch that we aren't using lately, but we'll get back to that. Of our podcast that is coming, it hasn't started yet,
Hmm.
but we did the first episode yesterday.
And now I have
Uh,
to
you know,
edit.
now you have to edit. Um, we are going to have 2 more games coming, not just one, two, because I don't feel
Wow.
like not working. Um, and one of them is Project Zero. We already have a demo out. The game is How Punk Could You Be If You Had Superpowers?
Hmm. Our particular tagline for it is it's a game about superpowers and everything they don't do for you.
Yeah. When you have superpowers, you don't stop being a person just because you can shoot fire from your hands.
Hmm.
Yup.
Um,
Yeah.
and the other, I think we're just going to say it right now, even though we're never said it to anyone. It's been a secret until now.
Hmm.
We're
Exclusive.
going to make a game that is near and dear to my heart because it speaks of things that I am very interested in, which are mainly gender and gender expression. The provisional title is A Night on the Town, and it's a one-shot game about a night in which all the fantasy creatures come in the streets and they do the largest pride you've ever seen.
Hmm.
We got elf drag queens. Come for the elf drag queens.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's awesome. We'll play it. We'll be there. Like setting reminders, checking the Kickstarter, waiting for that for sure.
Yeah. It's gonna be soon. Honestly, it's not even gonna be a big Kickstarter. Like that's a very short game to finish, and we already have the the way the game works. So it's because we tried it on another game.
Mhm.
So we're like just making the arts and it's done.
Mhm.
Nice.
Make the art, finish up the rules, get everything together. It's probably like
yeah,
it's a zine, really. It's like a zine book, right? It's small.
it's a zine, but it's a cool zine.
Mhm.
Well, still, zines are valid.
Oh yeah,
Zines are fun.
zines are great. I wish there were more
Awesome.
zines, like in general. That and one page game. They just need to get more exposure on on a more mainstream level. I'm really happy that games
Yeah.
like Sexy Battle Wizards lately are getting that kind of that game is incredible. Got 2 3 stats. Sexy
Yeah.
Battle and Wizards.
Yep.
Go nuts. Or Oni Heists, this kind of games that are just fun to pick up and play. Honestly, the future of gaming.
Mhm.
I'm saying it right here. Future of tabletop games, and it's a bright future. As long as we stay far away from the clutches of corporations and Wizard of the Coast, everything is gonna be cool. Don't play
All
D&D, people.
right.
Or play it if you like it. I'm
So,
not your mom.
what? All right. Any last where to find, etc. I know.
I do have a yeah. I mean, I do have an Emily art on Twitter that you can just see all my art and
Mhm.
when I post it, and also just be me being an insufferable communist, just talking about how capitalism is bad all day. Cool.
Yep. Um,
Why not?
and then I basically would just echo the same places because my Twitter is a wasteland of me just
Okay.
reblogging cool things I like and no actual content. So we're in
Sure,
all honesty, mostly here. Like,
sure does too much work inside of his own ad, and so there isn't time to
well, no, I do put it
yeah.
down on paper. It's just that
You
it's
think
half finished
you
and no one
think
wants to see it.
you do too much tonk.
Uh,
There is too much in shows ads. Sometimes it just comes to me like I have had this idea. I'm like I don't even know where that came from. Holy shit.
All right. Well, we will make sure all the links are going to be in the notes and everything so that we can continue to make sure people find the game and find all the new games and new things that you all are doing in your art because it's wonderful and we have greatly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Links and things for all of my normal stuff at Mental Woke on Twitter, and everything else will also be in the notes. And then the podcast is going to be going on hiatus until at least probably the end of the year. So might put out some stuff like sporadically, but in general, with the end of our Windy City Demons campaign, we are going to be going on hiatus because I am going to be busy as all fuck until December. And then it's December and no one does anything in December. So fuck it. We're just gonna, if I feel like putting stuff out, we will. So thank you both again for joining us. Thank everyone who has gotten to the end of this for listening to both our campaign of 12 Inner Demons as well as everything else we've been doing. Have a fabulous day.